Guess what?
What?
I get a call from a professor saying that Apple done called him because they need to get into his computer.
What? Since when Apple started calling
They
folks?
don't. That's the problem. Apple or Microsoft never call you to get into your stuff. That is a scam. That was a scam. Right after that, he let me know that his credit cards got access, and now he's locked out of all his iCloud accounts and stuff like that. And his contacts have been starting to be reached out saying it's him. They're calling
Oh
all his contacts and stuff like that.
my gosh.
So I told him, I said, hey man, you're gonna have to reset all your passwords and you're gonna have to cut up that credit card. I'm excited to partner with today's sponsor, Aura. Aura is an easy to use app that includes everything you need to stay safe online. Aura protects you from your scammers and hackers by scanning the so-called dark web where criminals sell stolen info, looking for your emails, passwords, social security numbers, and it alerts you fast if it finds anything. They help you fight back against those annoying websites that make your personal information public by automatically requesting removal of your info. This helps reduce robocalls. Those so annoying. Or gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries, like if someone was opening a loan or credit card in your name. Their VPN allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browser history and personal information safe and encrypted.
And they protect your devices from viruses, malware, spyware, and more so the bad guys can't break in. Aura even helps you manage what your kids can do on their devices. You can restrict specific apps, set screen time limits, and even set focus times to ensure your child is doing their homework instead of binging YouTube. I like that. And their password manager lets you store and access your online passwords securely and conveniently. Genius. Maybe you already have an app that does one of these things, but with Aura, you don't have to download and pay for 7 separate apps. That's what I really like. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with my link. You'll be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed over those 2 weeks, because we were, guys. Go to https:// aura.com/SIBO and Snapper to start your free trial, also linked below in the description, or scan the QR code. You're going to love it.
Yeah. We back at it, man. You already know what it is.
You know what it is.
So we got
on,
Thomas
Captain.
Sowell. We ain't done Thomas and him. Come on, yeah, for real. Here, there we go. Done a Thomas Sowell. We haven't done a Thomas Sowell in a while. So we got the important lessons from the history of slavery, Thomas Sowell. So I wonder if this just goes back into he just gives lessons on some of the things he's talked about, because we already reacted to several things he talked about with slavery. So I wonder what he's saying on this. You know, maybe it's just summing it all up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's listen.
Lelin.
What'd you say, Lily?
Lelin. Let's listen.
Who?
Lego.
Who?
No small part of the distortion and confusion about the history of slavery comes from attempts at scoring points about the past or using the past to extract concessions or largesse in the present. Non-Western slaveholding countries, past and present, from whom no reparations or other concessions are even remotely to be expected, are passed over in silence by the most vocal critics of the West. Scholars have long known that slavery was a worldwide institution, going back thousands of years, though that has not led them to provide comparable coverage to slavery outside of Western civilization. One scholar whose study of slavery encompassed Islamic as well as Western countries observed, "Slavery has been a common feature of human history, appearing in nearly every part of the world." Though his own study did not extend across the vast reaches of Asia or to the Polynesian islands. Another scholar, distinguished for his studies of the Atlantic slave trade, declared, "Slavery until recently was universal in 2 senses. Most settled societies incorporated the institution into their social structures, and few peoples in the world have not constituted a major source of slaves at one time or another. Despite such common knowledge among scholars, the version of the history of slavery more commonly depicted to the general public, as well as to students in our schools and colleges, is more along the lines of Roots, or other similar productions. On the other end of the spectrum, one of the rationales for slavery used in both ancient times and in more recent centuries has been that consigning some people to perform the drudgery of the world freed others to pursue the higher things: education, invention, political leadership, the arts, etc., and thus advance civilization as a whole. Plato and Socrates came out of a slaveholding society, as did many of the remarkable leaders who founded the American Republic. But correlation is not causation, and even the correlation is not as clear as some apologists for slavery have assumed. Although Brazil imported several times as many slaves as the United States, it would be difficult to find Brazilian equivalents of Plato or Socrates or other world leaders in the advancement of civilization in the arts or sciences. The remarkable number of early American leaders who came out of Virginia, including Washington, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, had no counterparts in other southern states, which collectively had vastly larger numbers of slaves than those of Virginia. The South as a whole lagged far behind the North in producing leaders in the arts and sciences. Slavery has been too facile an explanation of both the positive and negative aspects of slaveholding societies. The idea that slavery was based on race or racism is yet another popular notion that will not stand up to a scrutiny of history, as we have already seen. Yet, beliefs about the innate ability of blacks in the United States by prominent American leaders of an earlier era have been invested with great moral implications by those seeking to score points. But beliefs are neither moral nor immoral. They may be accurate or inaccurate, founded or unfounded. But they acquire moral significance only when they are shaped to serve some ulterior purpose that is either moral or immoral. Belief in the innate equality of all people has been promoted in order to promote equal treatment of all people, and belief in innate inferiority has been promoted in order to justify discrimination against some people, but it is these goals which have moral significance. In the absence of such goals, the beliefs themselves are subject to the tests of evidence and logic, rather than the test of moral principles. Abraham Lincoln, for example, said of blacks that their abilities were no measure of their rights. Thomas Jefferson likewise said, "Be assured that no person living wishes more sincerely than I do to see a complete refutation of the doubts I have myself entertained and expressed on the grade of understanding allotted to them by nature, and to find that in this respect they are on par with ourselves. My doubts were the result of personal observation on the limited sphere of my own state, where the opportunities for the development of their genius were not favorable, and those of exercising it still less so. I expressed them, therefore, with great hesitation. But whatever their degree of talent, it is no measure of their rights. Because Sir Isaac Newton was superior to others in understanding, he was not therefore lord of the person or property of others." That took the question of Jefferson's beliefs about the innate ability of blacks out of the realm of morality. Elsewhere, Jefferson pointed out how tentative any conclusion must be about the innate ability of blacks, given the lack of scientific precision possible on such questions. Although Jefferson has been criticized for having expressed doubts, what he called a suspicion only, about the innate ability of black people, his obvious pleasure at discovering the able work of Benjamin Banneker suggests that his beliefs were not the servant of some ulterior purpose. The vast majority of blacks that Thomas Jefferson saw were illiterate people whose development had been stunted by slavery. He never in his entire life saw a black American who had a college degree, because there were none. The first black man to receive a college degree in the United States did so 2 years after Jefferson's death, and the first black woman more than a quarter of a century after that. As Jefferson himself realized, his observed sample of black people was inherently biased by time and place, which is an empirical deficiency of his circumstances, rather than a moral choice of his own. Others, however, used their belief that blacks were innately lacking in ability to justify, for example, forbidding the teaching of blacks. Frederick Law Olmsted's response to the claim that blacks were no more capable of being educated than animals were was to ask why there were no laws forbidding animals from being educated. The very need for such a law undermined the belief that was used to justify that law. Again, the moral significance of a belief derives from the purpose to which it is put. Otherwise, there is only a question of assessing the logic and evidence behind the belief. While facts about slavery are essential, we need more than facts. Indeed, one of the principal uses of facts is to gain some sense of causation, some explanation of why history unfolded as it did. In the case of slavery, it has been too readily assumed that resistance to emancipation in 19th century America was based simply on the economic interests of those who owned slaves, when in fact, abolitionists were hated even in states that had outlawed slavery, and emancipation was feared even by white Southerners who owned no slaves, who were a majority of white Southerners. When slavery is viewed in worldwide perspective, still more common beliefs crumble when confronted with the facts of history. The truth should need no apology, but the truth about the history of slavery is urgently needed for reasons that go beyond historical accuracy.
Absolutely.
I believe it.
Both the present and the future are at stake when we look at the past. What lessons we draw from that past depend on whether it is viewed narrowly or against the broader background of world history. From a narrow perspective, the lesson that some draw from the history of slavery, automatically conceived of as the enslavement of blacks by whites, is that white people were, or are, uniquely evil. Against the broader background of world history, however, a very different lesson might be that no people of any color can be trusted with unbridled power over any other people, for such power has been grossly abused by whatever race, class, or political authority has held that power, whether under ancient despotism or modern totalitarianism, as well as under serfdom, slavery, or other forms of oppression. It was not because people thought slavery was right that it persisted for thousands of years. It persisted, largely, because people did not think about the rightness or wrongness of it at all. In very hierarchical societies, where most people were born into their predetermined niches in the social complex, slaves were simply at the bottom of a long continuum of varying levels of subordination based on birth.
Wow, look at it.
Even in colonial America, white indentured servants were a major part of the population, and they were auctioned off just like black slaves.
Wow.
It was the rise of modern free societies and their accompanying ideologies in the West, which made slavery stand out in stark contrast. And it was the emergence of a general questioning of institutions and beliefs in the 18th century, also in the West, that brought slavery into question. Once that happened, slavery could not stand up under moral scrutiny. Outside the West, it did not have to, at least not until after the spread of Western ideas of individual freedom belatedly took hold in some other societies. That such an institution could last so long unchallenged on every inhabited continent is a chilling example of what can happen when people simply do not think.
Wow. And I mean, overall, it seems like now with a clear understanding, because we've done several of these videos, that it was clear that they
Crystal. Everybody get it.
That they knew it wasn't a great practice, yet they still had jobs needed to be done and civilizations need to be built, and they weren't going to do it, so they continued to push slavery.
Absolutely.
Until it was pretty much forced to shut down to a degree. They all knew it was inhumane.
I like on that part when he said, you know, these social needs, they need to hear the truth that everybody could have got sold. I mean, I wish there was just some way this could just be repurposed in the school. If you're going to keep teaching on, come on, camera. If you're going to keep teaching on irrelevant information, and someone say this, right? The understanding of this part needs to be taught. The roots portion needs to be cut out of history books. I don't know what the schools are still teaching now, but when I grew up, this was taught. But I feel like the roots portion needs to be cut out. The real portion needs to be added in, and you need to be teaching it's time for the school system to start teaching more stuff for what really counts in this era, not really what counted 20, 30 years ago. But if you're going to teach it, time to teach it right. No time with the enslaved education. But I don't even know if they're doing that anymore. That was so long ago.
But
do you know if that?
I don't know.
But you out of the system.
I don't know, like in what age group they started talking to you about slavery, whether it was middle school, high school, even in.
I remember. I think that was high school. I think high school.
Okay, social studies. That. Yeah, I feel like if you're gonna, just if it has to be in there, it needs to be an accurate account of a world trade.
Yeah.
And not such a brutal, a brutal display. A brutal display of, how it was slavery, was over here in Western society.
That would change it if you just give the worldview of it.
A worldview, because it was a natural practice all over the world.
Correct.
Maybe it's very little in China. They said East China was where they had slaves, but we still haven't found very much about slavery in China.
True. Yeah, they don't talk about that one too often. But yeah, that was good, man. He just really, what that did to me, he summed it up really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
He summed it up quickly, and he just said it needs to be retaught and rebroadcast. Yeah. So anyway, man, like, comment, subscribe. Don't take a nosedive. Comment down in the section below.
If you want some more. Yeah.